The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, he'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Rushcliffe, folks, for your Thursday episode. Now, do you remember a few weeks ago we visited a place called Thornville, which was in Harrogate, and that one was really difficult to cover because there was basically no village, no walking route, and only really one big house to talk about. It did have an interesting backstory though. It's the same story here. I brought you to a place which is very, very unknown to a lot of people. You can just drive past this and completely miss it. This is Wiverton Hall. Wiverton Hall at Wigfrid's farm. Right everyone, this one's going to be fun. Today, if I tried to do this one in the same way as usual, it would be extremely difficult. You see, as good as it is to go to a village, walk around it and learn about it, sometimes there's no actual village to visit. Here there's barely anything, except of course for one rather large house. This is where the now deserted medieval village of Wiverton once was. By 1510 it had become impoverished and reduced to just 4 houses and a cottage. It was in that year completely depopulated by emparkment when George Chaworth enlarged a park by 254 acres. That park belonged to Wiverton Hall. Even then, the current Wiverton Hall is not the one the man was looking to extend. All but the Grade 2 listed gatehouse of the original mansion was destroyed in the English Civil War, and the current house dates from 1814. That now is the principal residence in the parish of Wiverton Hall, but somehow there are 40 people that live within these boundaries. I'm not sure how, but that's apparently the case. So, with no route to walk or set of landmarks to visit, it's physically impossible to make a video about Wiverton Hall in the usual format. The hall is, after all, a private property, so I can't even drive to it. Or so I thought. What follows, therefore, is an extended history of the hall, the Chaworth family, and how this grand 19th century property came to occupy one of the 10,474 civil parishes of England. The parish of Wiverton Hall contains little more than the building which gives it its name. There is just one public road, and by stepping foot onto that, I've successfully visited, so job done. But I'm not moving on just yet. Now, of course, this place has got a very interesting history, and because I can't film a lot, that history is a lot longer than what I can visually show you, so I will have to get some pictures from the internet here. But that's not a problem. Here's the story of Wiverton Hall. The story of Wiverton starts in the Middle Ages with the Wiverton family, who took their name from a village which has long since been depopulated. They built a house here with a moat around it. That house is now gone, but the moat is still there, albeit with a distinct lack of water. The village was small, but it did have a church. The locals pronounced it Wiarton, a name which mutated a bit over time. It commanded a small estate, which passed down through the Wiverton family before finally coming to Sir William Chaworth in 1352. His son, Sir Thomas Chaworth, became a very wealthy man when his rich wife Alice died in 1416. He not only owned the manors of Wiverton and East Bridgeford, but also the Lincolnshire villages of Allington, Thoresby, Timberland and Toynton, and the vast estates of Lord Bassett of Drayton, who died childless in 1390. So the Chaworth family were major landowners, and we have mentioned them before in places like Annesley. Some of the Chaworth family members are buried in the churchyard in Langer. Although it's not 100% confirmable, it's generally accepted that Wiverton Hall was established by Sir Thomas Chaworth in 1450. The hall was a castellated mansion, and I'd imagine it was pretty awesome. Unfortunately, that building no longer stands. It was a Cavalier stronghold during the Civil War, which turned out to be not as strong as it should have been. Before the Civil War, however, Wiverton village was already virtually wiped out by the Chaworths. In 1510, Sir George Chaworth decided to remove the village to make it into more parkland for the hall. Granted, there were only 5 families in it, but I guess it wasn't a whole lot of fun if you were one of them. The result was Wiverton was reduced to just 4 houses, and the focus was well and truly on the Hall. The village was never rebuilt, meaning any earthworks here today are the last remaining clues to a much larger settlement. So what of the Hall then? Well, the Chaworth supported Charles I during the English Civil War, and in 1642 fortified Wiverton Hall to make it a garrison for the king. A year later, in 1643, Queen Henrietta, on her way from Newark, wrote to the king saying, "I shall sleep at Wiverton, and thence to Ashby, where we will resolve what way to take." Henrietta Maria wasn't the only royal guest to have stepped inside Wiverton's walls. Others include Prince Rupert of the Rhine and his brother Prince Maurice, who after visiting the king in Newark rode to Wiverton with about 400 troops. They stayed here until they could settle their plans. It was from Wiverton that Prince Rupert addressed a letter to Parliament, successfully asking for a pass for himself, his brother and other noblemen and gentlemen to leave England. In 1645, a garrison commanded by Chaworth surrendered to troops under Major General Sydenham Poyntz. That's the same Sydenham Poyntz who had taken Shelford Priory by storm the previous day. He had come to Wiverton with the intention of destroying it in order to prevent its use as a garrison. He was successful. The siege ended after only 1 day. Sir John marched out with his men who had to leave behind their weapons and provisions. The hall was then destroyed by the parliamentarians to prevent it being reoccupied by the royalists. Only the gatehouse was left standing. It's still there and was used as a farmhouse until the early 19th century. Wiverton Hall would not be rebuilt until 1814, and it's that building which forms the central focal point of the parish today. It's a Tudor Gothic Revival style masterpiece, restored from the mansion that preceded it. Although overthrown in the Civil War, Wiverton Hall remained the property of the Chaworths until the family became extinct in the direct male line. Mary Chaworth conveyed the property to the family of Musters by her marriage in 1805 to John of Colwick Hall. At the beginning of the 20th century, the hall was the home of John Patricius Chaworth Musters, who also owned Annesley Hall. He and his wife had 6 sons, 5 of whom fought in World War I. Of these, Patricius George died of wounds in 1915, Philip Mundy was killed in action in 1917, and Robert, weakened by poison gas, died of influenza in 1918. Between 1923 and 1938, the house was let to tenants, one of whom was Mrs. Doyley Ransom. In 1938, it was sold to the Crown along with its estate of 2,170 acres. For a time thereafter, it became the home of Major General Sir Miles Graham and his wife. During the Grahams' time, a visit was made there by Bernard Montgomery, 1st Viscount Montgomery of Alamein, on the 21st of August 1948. Now, my original plan here was to not drive up the drive of Wiverton Hall because I thought it was a private road. However, I have seen a few cars coming out of this entrance, which is something I definitely did not expect. So I'm going to chance it. I'm actually going to drive up this drive, but if I meet anybody and they tell me to turn around, I will, of course, come back. So what's it like today then? Well, it can be described as a castle home that's become the very English setting of etiquette lessons. The property currently has a tenant who has taught Western etiquette to the Chinese from the residents and is said to be in the process of moving out. Grade 2 listed, it was last on the market for £1.5 million. It's been used as a family home for the last 10 years and still has its extensive grounds, running to some 1.2 hectares. It's surrounded by generous lawned areas, mature shrubbery, trees and a woodland area. From the house, the views across the Vale of Belvoir are nothing short of stunning. All of this is pretty mental when you consider how far back from the road the hall actually is. Driving past its entrance, you wouldn't know it was there. If you didn't know it was there, of course. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.